A driving distraction is anything in and around the car that takes your eyes.
It's something that will either manually, visually, or mentally distract you.
A driving distraction is anything that takes your focus away.
Well, it's could be a variety of things that take away from your focus on the driving task.
Driving distraction would be anything that diverts your attention.
A driving distraction
from the driving task
that takes your attention off the road.
So while you're driving, you're going to encounter numerous roadside hazards. This can be as simple as a parked car on the side, maybe someone getting in and out of it. There could be construction off to either side of you as you're approaching. There could be taxi cabs or buses letting people in or out. There could be a crash nearby. Could be any kind of distraction off to the side that's kind of interesting to look at. We want to be careful in these situations to not focus too much on these roadside hazards. Sometimes we call it rubbernecking when there's been a crash and you're staring at it, and this can cause a crash in front of you because you're not paying attention in front of you. So figure out what you need to do to get around that crash, that distraction, roadside hazard safely, but focus again ahead of you in your intended path of travel, making sure you're not causing any more collisions or hazards on the roadway.
Anything outside of the car can be distracting. There's my friend's house. You know, there's just a whole bunch of things that could definitely be distracting out there. You know, I see a lot of times, especially with like road work and the cones, a lot of people will just like, they'll see the cones and they'll stare at them, and then they run into them, they run into those concrete barriers. It's just not focusing on those things. You can still see them in your peripheral, but just making sure you're watching the road where you're going.
Yeah, especially some of the construction zones with the maze of orange cones and barrels to drive your way through. As you approach, you may not even identify the pathway you're supposed to take till you get up to it. So, yeah, definitely can be distracting. Slow down, identify better. Just slow the car down so you have more time to identify what's happening, and you can gather that information you need to make that good decision.
It's just something like, look, I know human nature is, we're curious by nature, is to look over and see those things, but realize the last thing you want to do is be looking at a collision and cause another one. It's called rubbernecking, and it's, people kind of laugh at like, oh, you can't do that. It's like, well, yes, because it actually causes a lot of collisions on a yearly basis, putting police officers, the people outside of their cars after a collision. You're putting a lot of people at risk. In fact, you know, you always want to try to at least move over a lane. State law requires that. If you can't move over a lane, you definitely need to slow down to really protect the people that are out there on the side of the road, because it's your job as the driver of a car to protect those other people that are less protected than we are.
Okay, so this is good, because when you're talking about the roadside hazards and when you've got a construction crew out there and everything, it's almost, to me, it's just like when you see a police officer that has pulled somebody over on the highway. So how do all these officers keep getting hit? How do all these construction workers keep getting hit? Well, some of it is reckless speed. Nobody's going to argue that. But I think when they see the flashing lights, when they see the shiny orange cones and signs, your focus goes to that. And we're drawn to whatever we're focusing on. So what I like to do is when I see something like that, I immediately focus on where I want to be so that I am as far and safe away from that individual working on the road, or that police officer that has somebody pulled over, or that tow truck that's helping out somebody with a flat tire on the side of the highway. Whatever it may be, I'm going to bring my focus to where I want to end up, not what was actually going on.
All those things you just mentioned are the reason we have Colorado's move over law. What most people don't realize is when they're driving a vehicle, they steer where they're looking. And if you are staring to the side of the road wondering who's getting a ticket and why, there's a real good chance you'll go over and you'll hit those law enforcement. You've got to stay focused. Curiosity is human nature, it's tough. But you've got to keep your eyes forward. Don't worry about what's going on the side of the road. If it is a construction zone, or even if it is just law enforcement with somebody pulled over, slow down and keep focused on what's going on around you.